What's going on with the market, man? Let's talk about that.
Let's talk about that, and let's talk about what we think is going to happen in the future.
I'd love to. I'm sure we have some similar and different opinions.
Okay, so let's just go over the basics here. Interest rates are up.
Okay.
Demand is falling.
Okay.
Inventory has risen and is up.
Uh-huh.
And the days on market, meaning how long it takes a home to sell, is up.
Yeah, we just talked about that in the last video. 19 days a couple months ago to now just under 60.
Yeah, right.
Wow. So when you hear all that, it sort of does sound like doom and gloom, doesn't
Totally,
it?
right.
I mean, I think if we were going to put ourselves in the average buyer or seller's shoes, I could see why some people would be panicking about the future state of the market. But there's a lot of great things that are happening in the current market, and there's a lot of differences between our current market versus, let's say, the 2008, 2009, 2010 market that a lot of consumers are sort of relating this market to. And we want to debunk some of those myths, right? So yeah, rates are up. Yeah, demand is down. Yeah, inventory is up. Yeah, days on market is up. Yeah, the market is completely done a 180. But what are some of the differences we're seeing now versus maybe 2008, 2009, 2010?
Well, I think the first one is there's a lot more buyers that are ready to buy. I mean, there's 35 million plus more buyers right now that are available.
The millennials, right?
Yeah, like there's a ton of them. The millennials are making up a massive amount of the market, and yeah, the rates have silenced them a little bit, but they're there, they're waiting, they're ready to buy.
Yeah, I think there have been polls that have said the majority of millennials find value in home ownership and want that to be a part of their life. So despite the fact that demand is lower today because everyone's sort of trying to figure out what's happening, the bottom line is there's a ridiculous amount of pent-up demand from the millennials, the 35 million millennials that have expressed interest in buying. So that's a difference between now and 2008, 2009. What else?
Well, we are approaching, and there's lots of talk about a recession happening, right? And historically, when we have a recession, it doesn't necessarily equal a housing crisis.
Yeah, there's been, I want to say, 6 recessions. Of the 6 most recent recessions, only one of them, home prices fell.
Right.
And that was in 2008 and 2009, where the recession was actually caused by the housing crisis.
Right.
So, look, is that always going to be true? We don't know.
No.
But when we're looking at data, we're looking at trends and historical data, and historically, recession doesn't equal housing crisis. What else?
My favorite one, supply and demand. Okay, supply and demand issues, and right now we're still experiencing a supply issue. We still have low inventory to where we're still in a seller's market, kind of like a slight seller's market almost here, but the inventory is still very low. The demand is still pretty high.
Yeah, I mean, inventory is up over 200% since January, but here's an even more alarming statistic, is that it's still down 50% from 2019, which was still a seller's market.
Right.
So although the news and the headlines might be saying inventory is dramatically higher than it was in January, or inventory is 300% higher than it was in January, the reality is if you actually read the article, you realize that we're still significantly low on inventory.
Right.
It's growing though.
It is growing.
It is growing.
And another thing to think about is since the 2008 situation and crash and everything, we've learned a lot. So nowadays, loans are all very good.
Yeah, that market was an interesting market where, lenders were literally giving out money. There was a loan, a NINA loan, and it stood for no income, no asset verification. They basically just took your word for it.
Yeah.
And there was 0% down. So what was happening was buyers had no skin in the game. Buyers didn't have the ability to qualify for these loans, yet lenders were lending them money. So when the market shifted and the prices started to change, buyers had no problem walking away from these properties because they had no skin in the game, which leads us to our last difference of this market versus the previous market. It's equity right now in properties are so high.
Right.
So many buyers and homeowners have 50% equity in their property. So even if the market does shift, we're not going to see people walking away from their properties because they got way too much skin in the game. So knowing what you know about what's going on now, what the narrative is, but what the differences are, what do you think is happening in the market? Like, what is your projection?
My projection is that we're trending towards a more balanced market, probably to a slight buyer's market eventually. Now, there are some conditions on that. Obviously, rates have to stay high and continue to stay high. I think that we'll start to see things trend in a more balanced market and stick to maybe a slight buyer's market.
Okay.
And that might be 6 months or so down the road. I think by next year we'll have a real good indication.
Yeah, I think time will definitely tell. I think right now it's really the second month of our new market. So we're still all trying to adapt. Buyers, sellers, and agents are all trying to adapt. I think it's going to be very geographically related.
Yeah.
So for example, there are cities in Orange County right now that are newer. And these newer cities have a higher cost of homeownership, like i.e. supplemental taxes like Melrose. And also in these newer areas, inventory is generally significantly higher than in other areas that might be a bit more affordable. Those areas we're already starting to see prices flatten and in some areas even dipping. But then there are other cities in Orange County where affordability is really high and inventory is really low and homes are selling still for 5 to 10% above what the homes are listed for because the demand is so high. I think some areas will see declining prices. I think some areas will see flattening prices. And some areas may experience slight appreciation year over year. And that's what I think is going to be happening in the market. So again, it's not a one size fits all. Everyone's different in real estate. The market's different in different areas. What this all means is if you're thinking about making a move, you're thinking about buying or selling, you want to link up with professionals who have the data to give you the absolute best advice.
Correct. Right. Perfect.
Thank you guys so much for watching. Ryan, how can they stay in touch with us?
Make sure you follow us on all of our social media pages and subscribe to our videos on YouTube as well. If you guys have any content or information or topics that you want us to talk about, shoot us a DM. Let us know. We'd be happy to do it for you.